I live in a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood where everyone waves but secretly watches from behind their blinds. I bought my home here 2 years ago, looking for peace after years of city chaos. For a while, it was perfect. Kids rode bikes, dogs barked, lawns were trimmed, and weekends smelled like barbecue. But all of that changed when Karen moved in across the street. Now, when I say Karen, I don't mean it as an insult. It's just the perfect description. Mid-50s, always wearing floral shirts, oversized sunglasses, and a permanent frown that could curdle milk. She was the self-proclaimed HOA enforcer. No one voted her into that position. She just decided she had the right. It started small. Notes on my door. Your trash bin was out 5 minutes too long. Your grass is 2 inches higher than regulation. Minor annoyances, sure, but she seemed to get real pleasure out of policing everyone. Then came the mail incidents. One day I was expecting an important package, an old watch I'd sent out for repair. The delivery app said it was delivered, but when I checked my mailbox, nothing. I thought maybe the mail carrier made a mistake, so I brushed it off. But a week later, another envelope went missing. Then another. I checked with the post office. They confirmed everything had been delivered. My heart sank. Someone was taking my mail. At first, I suspected kids playing pranks. But one morning, I caught a glimpse of someone walking away from my mailbox. Floral shirt, blonde bob haircut, oversized shades. Karen. I didn't have proof, but my gut told me everything I needed to know. That night, I decided to test it. I put an empty envelope addressed to myself in the mailbox, sealed but containing nothing but a blank paper. I marked a tiny dot with a pen in the corner, so I'd know it was mine. Next morning, it was gone. That was the moment I knew. My heart raced, half from anger, half from disbelief. Who does that? Who steals mail, especially from a neighbor? I walked across the street to confront her. She was in her yard, watering her perfectly trimmed bushes like a scene from a suburban crime thriller. "Morning, Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She smiled, that fake, tight-lipped smile. "Morning, Tom. Lovely weather, isn't it?" "Yeah, sure is," I replied. "Quick question. Have you seen anyone near my mailbox lately? A few letters have gone missing." Her smile faltered for just a second. "Missing mail? Oh dear, that's terrible. You know, maybe the post office is slacking off. Government workers, you know how they are." She chuckled dryly. I stared at her. The way her eyes shifted, the way she over-explained. She was lying. I could tell. "Well," I said, "I've got a camera coming soon. If anyone touches my mailbox again, I'll have footage." Her watering can froze mid-pour. "A camera? Isn't that against HOA guidelines?" I raised an eyebrow. "I don't think so, Karen. It's for security." She didn't respond. She just pursed her lips and walked back into her house. That night, I didn't actually install a camera. Instead, I decided to play her game. If she was bold enough to steal my mail, maybe I could teach her to stop. Not by yelling or calling the cops, but by giving her a taste of instant karma. I remembered a box of small mouse traps I had in the garage. Not the kind that hurt, just enough to make someone jump. The plan was simple. I'd place one at the bottom of my mailbox, under a fake letter. If someone reached in to grab it, snap! A loud surprise. The next morning, I set it up before heading to work. My mailbox sat at the edge of my driveway, right across from Karen's house. I could already picture her creeping over, pretending to check her own mail before peeking into mine. By lunchtime, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept imagining it. That moment she'd open the flap, her smug hand reaching in, only to be greeted by a sudden snap. And maybe a startled scream. When I got home that evening, the trap was gone. So was the fake letter. But what wasn't gone was the rumor. As I parked my car, a neighbor called out from across the street, barely hiding a smirk. "Hey, Tom. Heard someone had quite a scare this morning." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What happened?" He grinned. "Apparently Karen was screaming about being attacked by your mailbox. Said she's calling the HOA about booby traps." I tried my best to keep a straight face. Wow, that sounds terrible. I hope she's okay. Inside, I couldn't stop laughing. Finally, a bit of poetic justice. But I had no idea. This little prank would spiral into something much, much bigger. Something that would bring the HOA, the postal inspector, and even the police into our quiet cul-de-sac. And it all started with one mouse trap. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not just normal knocking, furious, rapid banging that made my dog start barking like the house was under siege. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and opened the door. And there she was, Karen. Hair frizzed, sunglasses perched unevenly on her face, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "You," she snapped, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. "You're in serious trouble, Tom. I've already called the HOA, and they'll be here any minute." I blinked, confused but amused. "Good morning to you too, Karen. What exactly am I in trouble for today?" She gasped dramatically, as if I'd insulted her very soul. "For setting up traps in public mail property. You could have injured someone. Do you realize that's a federal offense?" I leaned against the doorframe. "Karen, first of all, that mailbox is on my property. Second, I've had multiple packages stolen. Third, whoever stuck their hand in there shouldn't have been doing that in the first place." Her lips tightened. Someone was checking for damage. It's my duty as HOA safety coordinator." I raised an eyebrow. "You just admitted it was you." Her face went red like a tomato left out in the sun. "That's not what I said. You twisted my words." Before I could reply, a silver SUV pulled up, and two people stepped out wearing matching blue shirts with HOA board member stitched across the chest. Perfect. The cavalry had arrived. One of them, Greg, was the HOA president, a tall, balding man who looked like he took his job way too seriously. Beside him was Linda, the HOA secretary, armed with a tablet and an expression that said, "I live for drama." Greg cleared his throat. "Morning, folks. What seems to be the issue here?" Karen immediately launched into her performance. This dangerous man, has booby-trapped his mailbox. I nearly lost a finger." Greg frowned. "A trap? That's a serious claim." I crossed my arms. It wasn't a trap. It was a harmless snap trap. It can't even break a pencil. And it was inside my mailbox because someone keeps stealing my mail. Linda looked intrigued. "Do you have proof that your mail was being stolen?" "I do now," I said. "The only person who got snapped was the one doing the stealing." Karen's mouth dropped open. "That's slander." "No," I said calmly. "That's karma." Greg rubbed his temples. All right. Let's all calm down. Karen, if you were checking someone else's mailbox, that's technically tampering with federal property. And Tom, while I don't think you broke any laws, it's not ideal to set traps, even mild ones." Karen gasped again. "You're taking his side? He's dangerous." Greg sighed. "Karen, we've had more complaints about you in the last 6 months than any other resident in the HOA. You've called the board for lawn height, fence color, porch lights." Linda nodded. "And that incident with the kids' lemonade stand." Karen turned pale. "That lemonade stand didn't have a permit." "Karen," Greg said flatly, "it was lemonade." The silence that followed was delicious. I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head as she tried to think of a comeback. Finally, she huffed. "I'll be filing a formal complaint, and when the postal inspector hears about this, you'll both regret it." She stormed off toward her house, muttering something about ungrateful neighbors. Greg turned to me. "Look, Tom, I get it. Karen's a handful. We'll have a word with her. Just maybe no more traps?" "Deal," I said with a grin. As they left, I couldn't help but laugh. Karen had officially embarrassed herself in front of the entire HOA board, but I knew her. She wasn't going to let it go that easily. And I was right. That evening, as I sat on my porch enjoying a well-earned cup of coffee, a white car pulled up. A man in a dark blue uniform stepped out, U.S. Postal Inspector in bold letters across his jacket. Oh, she actually did it. He approached me with a neutral expression. "Afternoon, sir. We received a report about a possible hazard involving a residential mailbox. Mind if I take a look?" "Not at all," I said, motioning toward the mailbox. "I took the trap out this morning. You're welcome to check." He examined it closely, running a small flashlight inside. "Looks clean," he said finally. "And you say items were being stolen?" "Yes, several pieces of mail. I believe the neighbor who filed the complaint may actually be the one responsible." He looked up. "We've had similar issues in nearby neighborhoods. Mail thefts becoming common. You might want to install a camera. If you catch someone in the act, we can pursue charges." I nodded. "Understood." Just then, Karen came marching down her driveway, waving her arms. "Officer! Officer! He's lying! That trap could have killed me!" The inspector raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, a spring-loaded snap trap can't cause serious injury." But, it's still an attack. I'm traumatized." The inspector's tone didn't change. "Ma'am, unless you have evidence of harm, I suggest you refrain from tampering with someone else's mailbox in the future. That is a federal offense." Her jaw dropped. "Wait. What?" I smiled sweetly. "Guess we both learned something today, huh, Karen?" She sputtered, speechless for once, before turning and stomping away, red-faced and furious. As the inspector left, he gave me a nod. "If she keeps causing trouble, give us a call. Some people only learn the hard way." And with that, my quiet evening returned. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen had just been publicly humiliated twice in one day, and if I knew her at all, she was already plotting her revenge. And me? I was ready for it. Because this time, I wasn't just protecting my mail. I was protecting my peace. For a few peaceful days, life returned to normal. No more shouting, no angry knocks, no stolen letters. I even started to think maybe Karen had finally learned her lesson. That illusion lasted exactly 4 days. It was a crisp Thursday morning. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I noticed Karen outside, standing near the mailbox row with her phone up, snapping photos like a paparazzi on a mission. She was wearing her usual "I run the neighborhood" outfit, a bright pink tracksuit, oversized sunglasses, and a sun visor that looked like it could pick up radio signals. My gut told me she was up to something. Sure enough, later that afternoon, Greg from the HOA called. "Hey, Tom! Small update. Karen's filed another complaint. This time she claims you've installed surveillance equipment in violation of HOA privacy rules." I nearly spit out my drink. "She's talking about my doorbell camera, right?" "Yeah," Greg said, sighing. "Apparently she says it's aimed directly at her front yard." I laughed. "Greg, it's literally facing my door. The only thing it can see of her property is her lawn gnome army." "Yeah, I figured," he replied. "We'll review it at the next board meeting. Just try not to engage with her until then." "Trust me," I said. "That's all I want." But not engaging with Karen was like trying to ignore a fire alarm in your living room. That evening, as I took my trash bins to the curb, she came marching over, her little dog yapping beside her. "So," she said loudly, "recording me now, are you? Violating my privacy?" I sighed. "Karen, it's a doorbell cam. It records my porch, not your soap opera reenactments." "You think you're so clever," she hissed. "Setting traps, recording neighbors, making me look bad in front of the HOA. You won't get away with this." I smiled faintly. "Karen, I already have." She turned red. "We'll see about that." The next day, things got worse. My mailbox was stuffed, and not with mail. It was crammed with trash, napkins, empty soda cans, even an old magazine rolled tight and wedged inside. I took a photo, shook my head, and muttered, "So that's how we're playing, huh?" I cleaned it out, installed a small discreet security camera near the mailbox post, and waited. It didn't take long. That night, around 11 p.m., I caught movement. A figure in a pink tracksuit crept across my lawn, glancing around like a cartoon villain. She stopped at the mailbox, pulled out a plastic grocery bag, and started stuffing it again with trash. The next morning, I downloaded the footage. It was crystal clear. Even the logo on her visor could be read. I sent it straight to Greg with the subject line, "Maybe it's time for a special HOA meeting." By noon, the board had called an emergency session. When I arrived, Karen was already there, sitting at the long conference table with her arms crossed, glaring daggers. Greg cleared his throat. "We've reviewed a complaint about property vandalism. Tom, you submitted footage?" "Yes," I said, plugging in the USB drive. The room went silent as the footage played. There was Karen, caught red-handed, tossing garbage into my mailbox, then glancing around, grinning and scurrying back home. When the clip ended, nobody spoke for a moment. Then Linda, the HOA secretary who'd always had a soft spot for drama, leaned back in her chair and said, "Well, that's pretty definitive." Greg looked at Karen. "Anything you'd like to say?" Her face was bright red. "That's not me. That's clearly someone trying to frame me." "Karen," Greg said patiently, "you're wearing the same pink tracksuit and visor you wore to the last meeting." Linda snorted. Karen shot her a look. "This is harassment. He's targeting me." I folded my arms. "You targeted yourself when you couldn't keep your hands, or your trash, to yourself." Greg sighed heavily. "All right, enough. Karen, this is your third violation in less than a year. The board's going to issue a formal warning. One more incident, and you'll be fined and removed from HOA committee duties." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't do that! I am the committee!" "Not anymore," Greg said firmly. "Effective immediately, you're suspended." The silence that followed was glorious. You could have heard her tiny dog panting from across the room. Karen looked around, waiting for someone to defend her. No one did. She grabbed her purse, stood, and hissed, "You'll all regret this." Then she stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the blinds shook. Linda turned to me, smiling faintly. "Well, Tom, congratulations. You might have just accomplished the impossible, shutting Karen up." I laughed. "We'll see how long it lasts." But honestly, it felt good. For the first time since moving into that neighborhood, I felt vindicated. Over the next few days, things quieted down again. No trash, no shouting, no drama, just peace. Even the other neighbors started chatting more, like the tension in the air had finally cleared. Then one morning, I found an anonymous note taped to my door. It read, "Enjoy your victory. I'm not done yet." No signature, but I didn't need one. Karen wasn't going quietly. I took a deep breath, looked toward her house, and smiled. If she wanted another round, I'd be ready. Because after everything she'd pulled, the stealing, the lies, the games, I had one final trick left up my sleeve. And this time, I wouldn't even have to lift a finger to watch her reputation crumble. For 2 whole weeks after the HOA meeting, the neighborhood was eerily calm. No complaints, no confrontations, no pink tracksuits lurking behind hedges. I'd almost convinced myself Karen had given up. Maybe she was too embarrassed to show her face after the video incident. But deep down, I knew better. Karen didn't quit. She plotted. It was a chilly Saturday morning when the chaos returned. I was in my garage working on a small woodworking project when I heard shouting outside. At first I ignored it until I caught my name. I stepped out to find Karen standing at the end of my driveway, waving a thick stack of papers like she was leading a protest. "There he is!" she yelled, her voice shrill enough to scare off the crows on the power lines. "The menace of Maple Ridge!" Behind her, a few neighbors peeked through their curtains. "Morning, Karen," I said calmly, wiping sawdust from my hands. "What's the performance about today?" "This," she said, thrusting the papers toward me. "A formal complaint. You've been tampering with HOA equipment." I blinked. "What equipment?" "The drainage sensors and water meters," she snapped. "You probably installed your little traps there too." I actually laughed. "Karen, I have a job. I don't spend my evenings sneaking around underground water systems." She stomped her foot. "Don't mock me. You think you're untouchable, but I've got proof this time. I folded my arms. Proof of what? That you're obsessed? Her eyes narrowed. You'll regret that. She turned and stormed off, yelling to no one in particular. We'll see how smug he is when the police show up. That's when I realized she was going to try one last stunt, and it was going to blow up bigger than she imagined. That evening around sunset, 2 police cruisers pulled into the neighborhood, lights flashing, engines rumbling. Karen was already standing at the end of my driveway, fake tears streaming down her face. There, she cried. That's him! He's been breaking into HOA property and spying on me. The officers, both looking more tired than impressed, exchanged glances before one approached me. Sir, he said, mind telling us what this is about? I sighed. Officer, you might want to talk to Greg from the HOA. I'm guessing this is another one of Karen's misunderstandings. Karen gasped dramatically. He's lying. He vandalized my property, set traps, and... Ma'am, the officer interrupted, holding up a hand. Let's just slow down. Slow down? She shrieked. I demand you arrest him. The other officer, a tall woman with a calm but firm tone, said, Ma'am, we'll handle it. Do you have any actual evidence? Karen waved her stack of papers. Right here. HOA documents proving he tampered with neighborhood utilities. The officer flipped through the pages. These are just printed emails. Karen stammered. Well, I know he did it. I saw him outside one night. The officer sighed. Ma'am, that's not proof. The first officer turned to me. Sir, can we confirm your identity? I nodded and handed him my ID. He looked at it, and his eyebrows lifted. District Attorney's Office? Karen froze. What? The other officer glanced at her, then back at me. You work for the DA? Deputy DA, I said evenly. And I've been documenting every one of her false claims for over 3 months. Karen's face went pale. No, he's lying. The officer handed back my ID. Ma'am, I think we're done here. You need to stop filing false reports. This could be considered harassment. Karen blinked, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You can't threaten me. I have rights. Yes, ma'am, the officer said, and so does he. If you continue, we'll have no choice but to issue a citation for misuse of emergency services. Her voice cracked. You can't do this. I'm part of the HOA. The officer deadpanned. That doesn't make you above the law. And then, the cherry on top, Greg pulled up in his pickup truck. He walked over, phone in hand, and said, Karen, we just reviewed the neighborhood security feed. Guess who was seen spray painting Tom's fence last night? Her head snapped toward him. That wasn't me. Oh, it's you, he said flatly. Pink tracksuit, same dog, same visor. Karen's voice broke. You're all against me. This is a setup. The female officer looked tired now. Ma'am, please stop yelling. But Karen didn't. She lunged toward me, shouting, You'll regret this! That was it. The officers stepped in immediately. One grabbed her arm, the other calmly said, Ma'am, that's enough. You're coming with us. The neighbors who had been peeking through their blinds now stepped out, phones up, recording everything. Karen's screams echoed down the street as the officers gently escorted her to the patrol car. I didn't do anything. He's framing me. The moment the car door shut, the neighborhood went silent. Greg turned to me, exhaled, and said, Tom, remind me never to get on your bad side. I chuckled. Trust me, I didn't even have to lift a finger. She did all the work for me. 2 weeks later, the HOA sent out an official notice. Karen had been permanently removed from all committees and fined for vandalism, trespassing, and filing false police reports. Her house went up for sale a month later. No one ever saw her again after the moving truck left. As for me, I got my peace and quiet back, and a few friendly neighbors even stopped by to thank me. Finally, Greg joked, a neighborhood without drama. I smiled, leaning on the fence that had caused so much chaos. Let's keep it that way. The mail carrier drove by, gave a wave, and said, "Hey, no more mouse traps, right?" I laughed. Only if someone tries to steal my mail again. And just like that, the street was calm again. No pink tracksuits, no shouting, no stolen envelopes. Just the faint sound of birds, and the knowledge that sometimes doing nothing is the best revenge of all.